block of work before we break up for half term. What we're going to have a look at today is the self-assessment of your own model cells, and I also want you to peer assess some of the other models as well. Now, I've prepared this video a little bit before the deadline, so I've only put on this slide here some of the early submissions. The rest of the work is still coming in, but I didn't have a chance to make this video after all of that. So don't worry if yours isn't on here. It's just I picked out some of the ones that had been handed in nice and early. So you can see here we've got some models of different cells. And I've put numbers on them so you can identify them. There aren't any names, but if you've been speaking to each other, you might know who's made which one. So we've got a fantastic one here made out of some food, some bits of pasta. Another one using bits of food and bits of pasta, and an original Lego one. Some paperwork there. A sperm model with incredibly detailed colouring in and drawing. One that's been felt worked or stitched up there, I think. An incredible sandwich, which I was very impressed with. A plant cell using a Tupperware and some frozen peas and bits of food, showing a nice model there. An outdoor nature one, which is a really original idea. Cardboard model with really clear labels. And then a big 3D sphere showing a 3D model of the cell, which is really impressive. Now, there are still lots to come in, so don't worry, as I said, if yours isn't in there. But the purpose of today's lesson is to self-assess your work based on the success criteria. So the next slide I'm going to show you is the success criteria. So this is attached to the document. This is what you need to fill in today's lesson. So you can see there were 4 things that we needed to pick out. The first thing is that you've correctly labelled your cell. If you need to check which labels you needed to include, you can see that they are in here in the specification points, but also you'll find them on your task sheet from the original task. Then you need to include original descriptions of the functions of each organelle, so what each organelle does. It needs to be really well presented. You had quite a bit of time to do this, so incredibly really well presented. And an original idea. So you'd get lots of points if you came up with a really original idea. And what you are going to do is self-assess your own model here. So if you've included all of the labels, you'll give it 10 out of 10. If you've included most of the labels, 7, 8 or 9, depending on how many, and use your common sense on that. If you've included some descriptions, give yourself 3 or 4 marks. If you've included all of the descriptions and they are accurate, so they actually match with what we've discussed further at the beginning of this topic, give yourself 10. If you've included no descriptions, you must give yourself 0 for that mark. Presentation, a bit more subjective here. What is the presentation like? Do you think that person has spent a long time putting some thought and skill into that, or do you think it's rushed? You give yourself and the people you're marking a mark out of 10 for that. And then try and gauge how original you think the model is. So we've seen there in the examples I've shown you some really original models, and then some models that are very similar to the examples that I put together. So if someone's been incredibly original, give them a 10 out of 10. Then I'd like you to write a positive comment in that box. So I really like the way that you've used the twigs to represent the cell membrane. The little breaks between the twigs might show how substances can go in and out of the cell. And then an improvement. So you can improve this model by including descriptions, saying why you've used particular things in your model. And then tot up the score and see what you get out of 40. So I've done an example for one of the ones that I included. This isn't a student from Cundall. This is one that I've just picked up off the internet. So they've baked a cake. You can see all the organelles are there. Incredibly original. Lots of labels. Very, very detailed. They've actually gone further than we need to go. They've included some organelles that you learn about when you're doing A-level biology. But there are some bits missing from that. So I'll show how I've marked that one. So for the labels, I gave it a 10 out of 10. Because it had all of the labels and it was great. It had no descriptions at all. So if that was for one of our tasks, I would give it 0. The presentation I thought was excellent. It would have taken a long time to do that. The presentation was good, everything was well positioned, the labels were well written, everything was very, very clear, so 10 out of 10. And I thought it was incredibly original. So again, I gave it 10 out of 10 for that. Comments, I thought it was a very original idea. And the organelles, the things he's picked for the organelles, look just like they do in the textbooks and in the microscope images that we see. To improve that, I would say that that person needed to add some descriptions. So that's what was missing. And then I would add up that score and then give 30. What you need to do, going back to your sheet, when my mouse starts working, you do yourself, so self-assess your model and write a comment for yourself and write an improvement for yourself. Then, from this sheet, which will be attached to today's assignment, pick out 4 and go through the assessment process for those 4. You can see on each one I've written a number, so you can use those numbers to show which one you've done. If you're in touch with someone else, or you've had a meet-up, or you've sent each other images of your models, you could self-assess someone else's. If you do that, just put their name on it, please. If you have a brother or sister in the same year, working on the same thing, you could self-assess you could peer assess each other's, but please write their name on it so I know who's you're assessing, so that I can look at the original model and see how close you are to that assessment. So that's what you need to be doing today. Well done on that. The ones I've seen so far are fantastic. I'm sure all the other ones will be really good as well. I will be assessing them as well. I've already awarded house points for work that you've done this far. Obviously, there'll be house points and hopefully some show-ups for this activity. I'll put all of those onto Schoolbase over half term. So I'll be able to tot everything up over the course of the 2 weeks that we've had together, and then I'll be able to put those on half term. So you've worked fantastically. I'm really impressed with everything you've done. Brilliant on this one. I look forward to seeing all your model cells, and have a lovely half term.